be able to run model from your desk? A little bit.
Dimitri, is my screen showing up okay?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Give us a couple of minutes, and then we'll get started.
Hey, James, this is Jennifer. Can you mute the attendees?
I'm sorry?
Can you mute the attendees? It's really hard to hear you.
Let me see if I can do that.
I've done it.
You got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
James?
Hello?
You guys got started yet?
Not yet. Another minute or so. I also just want to let everybody know that we're recording this demo today, and we'll be posting it to the Beeline Software website so that if you wanted to go back and check something, or if somebody in your office was not able to sit in and catch this, you certainly have the opportunity to go back and review what we go over today. Having said all that, hello, my name is James Redd. I'm with Aura Solutions, and today I want to give a little brief demonstration on the ways you can process for the new 1-hour SO2, 1-hour NO2, and 24-hour in the brand new version of AERMOD that came out a month or so ago and was incorporated into Beast a couple of weeks ago, I guess it's been now. Anyway, so I guess, Dimitri, whenever you're ready to start recording, we'll get started.
Go ahead, James.
Okay, cool. What I want to first do is kind of give you a background on the two new NAAQS that we're having to deal with. In both for 1-hour NO2 and 1-hour SO2. Then I will go through the new output options that EPA has put into AERMOD, which will now allow you to directly compare your modeled output to the form of these new NAAQS standards. And then I'll show you a couple of examples, both of model setup, model output, and some of the additional files you can create within AERMOD now. Just to rehash here, we adopted the new 1-hour NO2 NAAQS back in January of 2010, and it became effective April 12th of last year. They then adopted a new 1-hour SO2 NAAQS in June of last year. It became effective August the 23rd of last year. Now, the new NO2 NAAQS is in addition to the already existing annual NO2 NAAQS, which we've been working with for years and years and years. But the new 1-hour SO2 NAAQS is actually replacing the existing primary NAAQS, which is a 24-hour standard and an annual standard. There's an existing 3-hour secondary SO2 NAAQS, which for right now is remaining in place. Now, what's a little different about these two standards is that the way that we use them in the modeling world, the way we address them in the modeling world, when we have to do compliance demonstrations for permits or attainment demonstrations or what have you, is that the form of the standard is such that for 1-hour NO2 NAAQS, you're looking at what the 98th percentile of the annual distribution of daily maximum 1-hour concentrations, and therefore the level of the standard, what your numerical value you're shooting at, is 100 parts per billion, which is roughly 188 micrograms per cubic meter. Likewise, the 1-hour SO2 NAAQS is based on a 99th percentile of the annual distribution of daily maximum 1-hour concentrations, and the level of that standard is 75 parts per billion, which is roughly 195 micrograms per cubic meter. Now, in terms of what that means for what the model can spit out, the 98th percentile is equivalent to the 8th highest value. The 99th percentile is equivalent to the 4th highest value. But even with that in the model, still could not get output from AERMOD, the old version of AERMOD, that would give you 98th and 99th percentiles of daily maximum 1-hour concentration distributions. So PA, as I mentioned, released AERMOD version 11103, and the great thing about this is it actually has built-in internal processing that will allow you to generate a 1-hour NO2 design value, a 1-hour SO2 design value, and 24-hour PM 2.5 design value. In other words, it'll take your modeling data and compare it directly with the standards in the form of the standard. And another easy or nice thing that was put into this version of AERMOD is that you can now add background concentrations that will give you a true, complete air quality of modeled plus monitored or other background. And then there's some additional output keywords that are part of the version of AERMOD that I'll show you that does make life a little bit easier if you want to delve a little more into the output. So let's get right into what it takes to do this internal processing. And the great thing is, again, this is an automatic thing within AERMOD, and it's not too picky. There's some things it has to have specific in order for this to be invoked. The first is that there are some specific pollutant names that have to be used. In other words, if you're looking at the 1-hour NO2 standard, you have to name the pollutant NO2. You can't call it NOx. Similarly, if you're modeling SO2, you have to call it SO2. If you're doing PM 2.5, you have a few more options there. You can call it PM 2.5, PM-2.5. There's actually a list that I'm going to show you on one of the BEAST screens that tells you what is acceptable as far as pollutant names. Now, the next thing that you have to have in AERMOD is you have to only be selecting the averaging time specific to the pollutants NAAQS that you're dealing with. In other words, if you're wanting to do 1-hour NO2 NAAQS modeling when you select your averaging period, you can only select 1 hour. And then the third thing that you have to do on this is that when you go to output options, you have to tell it the output rank that is associated with the form of the specific NAAQS that you're dealing with. In other words, if you're doing 1 hour NO2, which is based on 90th percentile, equivalent which is 8th high, then you have to check 8th high for NO2. Now, a lot of you that have been doing SO2 and NO2 modeling over the last year or so prior to the release of this model, or this version of AERMOD, you know what a pain in the neck it was to have the model save these humongous post files that you would then post-process in something like Excel or via one of our post-processors like NO2 post or SO2 post. Well, now with this version of AERMOD, you no longer have to deal with post files, and you now get to save more hard drive space on your computers, I guess. Now, this is just a blow-up of part of the BEAST screen. This is actually control options, and if you look down there at the bottom, this gives you the list of special pollutant IDs that is like the first step in telling AERMOD that you're doing something specific, that you want it to do something specific. And so you'll notice you have PN25, PN2.5, PN-2.5, PN-25. Any of those will help invoke processing for it. You also see NO2 and SO2 as specific names. In this instance, you see SO2, you only select 1 for 1 hour. If you were doing NO2, there's just the 1 hour there. If you're doing PN2.5, you select the 24-hour, and you can also select annual there as well. Now, that's the control option of the issue, the pollutant name and the averaging period. The next thing is you need to go to the output options screen, and the first one here is I guess what you call the tables or the rec table keyword in the model. Let's see, if you're dealing with SO2, since that's the 99th percentile, we want to select 4th high and only 4th high here. Likewise, if we were doing NO2, we want to select 8th high and 8th high only for it. And then last but not least, if we're doing PN2.5, since EPA's guidance requires us to look at the average over of the first highs, you're only going to select first high there. One other thing that I guess I didn't highlight on here, but I guess I'll point out to you, there's an option here called Omit File Headers, and what you'll see when I show you some of the files that come out of here, specifically max daily, max day by year, and max decomp, that gives you some information about what you're looking at. And I suppose if you've gotten to a point where you've looked at it quite a bit, you may not need the header information because you know what everything stands for. But in any event, you can take those out of here. So you have the option to select these guys, but we do have a little note here that just says caution. Okay. Then to reiterate what I said at the start of this, if and only if you meet those criteria of specific pollutant name, specific pollutant averaging period, and the rank for each pollutant, only at that point in time will AERMOD do the internal processing for you. Now, if you're, say, doing this for 5 years of metadata for a PSD project, which is typically what you would be doing, you probably will want to just concatenate your 5 years of met data into a single met file, and once you do that, and you'll see this in the output that I show you, the model will go in and do averaging over each of the years automatically. Now, that you can use the 5 years concatenated. The internal processing routine, however, also works if you're just following a single year of net data. I mentioned the user-defined background concentrations, which allows you to get a more complete picture of model plus background values. And again, this is a new thing for AERMOD version 11.103, and you have a lot of flexibility in that you can put in a single value that is assumed to be the same year-round, or you can go in and create a table of background concentrations that vary by season or per month or week or day of the week. If you remember the different ways you can do source scalars in AERMOD, it's the same thing, day, week, month, season, and so forth. And basically within BEAST, all you have to do is go to source options and group, which is this guy right here. And if you'll notice, the screen looks a little different than it did before. And that we now have these background flags that you can select. One thing you will notice not on here that was before is there's not an each value located in here. That's actually over here on this button called Auto Create. Where you click Auto Create, BEAST will create a source group for every source that you have listed. Otherwise, like an example here, I had two source groups I wanted, one for my project sources and one for my non-project sources. And again, okay, here's, all, you want to have all, especially if you're going to be doing contribution analyses later. And you'll probably want to include the background information with all your sources as well. And then as far as where you put the background information in, there's just this button at the bottom here, enter or change background. And that screen looks like this, where if you just have one value, you would click here, annual average. If you want to change things by different time periods, you can click here, and you have a drop-down that will give you season, month, week, day of week, and so forth. And then you can change the units of the background concentrations here. Conversely, if you happen to have an hourly background file, every hour of the year and so forth, you can select this button here, and it will do the same thing. If you do, then you have to either put in a Fortran format statement down here, or it's a free format, which is that the data fields are separated by a delimiter like a blank. Now, the other third thing, I guess, that we have in the new version of AERMOD, in addition to the post-processing and the background considerations, are these new output keywords that EPA has added to the model. And these can provide you additional information that you can use to try to ferret out, are you seeing any one particular source that's contributing to the design concentration and so forth. Now, some of that is the same information that we saw in the post file, but it's not nearly as much as it was before, thank goodness. And the three new keywords that we have are max decont, max daily, and max day by year. And one thing I want to point out is that these are additional, probing tools that you have, but they are not required to invoke the 1-hour NO2, 1-hour SO2, and 24-hour PM 2.5 processing that is part of AERMOD. They're in addition to, and again, they're not required. They're optional. Now, the first of these, MAAQS is a way to help you determine source culpability, looking at concentrations in time and in space. And you can use this to determine if some of the groups you have listed, whether it's a cluster, a group that you create, or each source that you have, is contributing to the design value at each source, or excuse me, at each receptor. Now, this new keyword only applies to 24-hour PM 2.5, the 1-hour NO2 NAAQS, and the 1-hour SO2 NAAQS. And looks something like this. In this example, what you would do is go to Output Options and click this last tab here, MAAQS cont file. And for this example, I NO2. And what you want to do is you're trying to determine how all the source groups contribute to what you define in source group all. So the first thing you want to do is select all as your source. And then since it's NAAQS compliance is based on 8th high, you want to put 8 under upper rank. And then you want to put a threshold value here, which is, in this case, it would be the NAAQS for NO2, which is 188. Oops. And then the last thing you do is there's a drop-down box here, and you just give it a file name. And I'll show you an example of what that file looks like when we get to the demo portion of this. The next new keyword is MAAQS Daily, and it will provide you the maximum daily 1-hour concentrations for a specific source group, which can be all or whatever you call it. And it's going to give you that output on a per day, per receptor, per year basis. So if you think about it, you're going to have 365 or 366 days times the number of receptors times the number of years you've modeled. That's how big the file is going to be. Now, if you remember, we did the post files before, post and SO2 post, and that was similar, except that it was giving you every concentration for every receptor for every hour, not just for the highest hour of each day. Now, this output option only applies to the 1-hour NO2 and 1-hour SO2. And this one here is you just go to the MAAQS Daily tab again. You have a drop-down. You select the group, and probably all would be a good one. And you get a drop-down here, and just give it a file name of what you'd like to call it. And then we just have a note that says that you cannot invoke this for other pollutants or other averaging times. And then the last keyword that we have with the new AERMOD is MAAQS Day by Year. And it's going to create a summary of the maximum daily 1-hour concentrations by year. And what it gives you is the highest rank. Since we're doing 8 high, for example, for NO2, it'll give you the 8th high rank at each receptor over each year. And this is what this one looks like. Again, you select the tab there's a drop-down for the source, and there's a drop-down for a file name. And again, you can only use this for 1-hour SO2, 1-hour NO2. One caveat, and that's a pretty important caveat, I guess I should say, in using these guys, if you're setting up your background input concentration, or if you're wanting to invoke outputs like max daily, max day by year, or max decont, these are not saved or stored separately by beast. If you remember when you were processing using post files, what you would have to do is either create separate beast files, say for each year, or edit your DTA files, because what would end up happening is your first year would run, you'd write a post file, the next year would run, it would write a post file over the first post file. And so you have to be careful with this in beast. And probably if you do have a multiple pollutant or multiple scenarios that you're dealing with, you want to create multiple beast files in order to keep track of the different backgrounds, which are obviously going to be different for each pollutant, as well as the outputs to the other three keywords. So let me pop out of this and show you a little more of what these demos are like. This is an example of part of a run that I did yesterday. Again, you see I'm selecting only 1-hour SO2, 1-hour NO2, and the two periods for PM 2.5. So that's step one. If I go to meteorology data, I've actually created a concatenated net file, and I'm going to use it. Now I go to output options, and since I'm only doing SO2 for this example, again, I made sure that I had fourth high selected here, and since I wanted to look at the contribution, I went to max decont, and I said I want to find out how much the other groups contribute to all, and this is fourth high, standard is 195, and this is the file name that I gave it. Now, for those of you that have taken our class over the years, this probably looks familiar. This is our standard class exercise where you have a defense line here. There's two buildings. There's a stack here, receptors, and in order to try to make it a little more lifelike, I put in another set of sources up here in this, where this blue property line is. I think there's 11 or 12 sources here, and actually if I go up here and show you, stack one is the original one, and the four background sources are there. So anyway, and oh, by the way, let me also mention, looking at the MET files, although I did this a concatenated MET file, it will the post processing will also, or internal processing will actually work with single years of meteorology as well. I did determine that as well. And by the way, I think somebody had raised a question about are we getting the right numbers? And I did do a comparison between, all things being equal, the new version of AERMOD with the new processing versus the old way of creating post files through SO2 post, and I did get the exact same numbers. So either we're all right or all wrong. But anyway, levity aside, So there's my file. Other than that, you do the same setup, run, and so forth. Since these take about 10 minutes to run, I'm not going to do it online, but I will show you. So this is my output. If you look at the bottom here now, I'm telling you that this is the fourth highest daily 1-hour values averaged over however many years. In this case, it was 5. And this is telling me for the group non-project. If I go down to all, I say, oh my goodness, I've got a maximum of 323. I'm way over the standard. I wonder who the guilty party could be. And so I find my NAAQS file. Looks like, excuse me, telling you that you pick the fourth highest max daily 1-hour values over the 5 years you modeled, and you're comparing the contributions toward all. And so over here we have the XMI receptors, the concentration for all, and there's the rank. And what you see is, or what you will see, is a list of columns of data where at the very far end of it is all. It will be triggered when you actually exceed the standard, the threshold in here. So what I have is impacts from non-project, from project. Here's background, which is now a separate source group, if you will, and all. And I see, if I don't exceed the threshold, I see zeros. But if I come down here, now I see that the all was this receptor, 199. I set the background at 80 micrograms as an annual value, so that will always be the same. And here's the, for my project sources, here it is for my background source, my non-project sources. So using MaxDcont, you can sort of see who is contributing to this value, and this is at a time, at a space, or space being the receptor. So that gives you some more information on how things can contribute. Now that's MaxDcont. I did another run where I looked at Max Daily, and what you see here just says this is your Max Daily file daily maximum 1-hour values by day for all sources. And again, you'll see your UTM coordinates here. Here's the concentration, and this concentration is for the max for day 1. Because what you're going to see is this goes from day 1 through day 365. It tells me it happened at hour 15 on this date. So if I were to just leisurely scroll through here, I see that these Julian dates are going up. And again, it's days, times, numbers of receptors. And I think I should get up not too far. So it went through all of 2000, all 365 days, and then it starts over, and it knows to start doing the same thing for the year 2006, and then it goes to the same thing, day 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth for each receptor. So there's a little more information that you can get. And then the last one is max day by year. And again, you have the coordinates out here, the concentration associated with the fourth high, the day that it occurred, and these go by year. So this concentration, 133, is the highest daily maximum 1 hour value at this receptor for 2005, and it occurred on day 241, hour 23. And if I scroll down through this, I will see that it's not, and then it goes to 2006 and does the same thing. So you now have ways to grab more information than you did before, but not to the extent that we had with the post files. I don't think that was fun for anybody, actually. So that, I think, is basically, yeah, that's basically it for this demo. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything else. Let me put up my contact information real quick. Anyway, I understand that this has been an awful lot of information to throw at you. There's certainly more that can be explored on this. Particularly, I think what we will probably do is have a follow-on to this and deal with how to model the 1 hour NO2 using things like the plume volume modulation or ozone limiting method, again, with the new version of AERMOD. Having said all that, that's it for the presentation. I guess, Dimitri, we can stop recording now and maybe open it up for questions. And you can I think you can raise your hand too with this. Are we on? You mean to tell me I covered all the bases and nobody has any questions?
James.
Yes.
James?
Yes, hello.
This is Steve King from ERM.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.